Today on Straight Talk Africa, President Barack Obama plans to travel to his father's homeland, Kenya, where he will co-chair the Global Entrepreneurship Summit with Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. From there, he proceeds to the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, to meet with government officials and the African Union Commission. That's coming up next right here on Straight Talk Africa. Hello, welcome Straight Talk Africa, live from the Voice of America studios here in Washington. It's Wednesday, July 22nd. I am Shaka Ssali. My colleague and social media reporter, Maria Majaro, continues on her special assignment in the Senegalese capital, Dakar. And today, we'll discuss the significance of U.S. President Barack Obama's trip to Africa, with stops in his father's homeland of Kenya and Ethiopia. And coming up later in our STA inbox, our audience has weighed in on our topic through emails, tweets, and Facebook comments, and we'll reveal some of them later. But first, U.S. President Barack Obama has made Africa a top priority this week. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari visited the White House on Monday to discuss key security issues, and tomorrow, Mr. Obama will travel to Kenya and Ethiopia to talk about trade and security issues. The top U.S. diplomat for Africa, Linda Thomas Greenfield, recently discussed Mr. Obama's trip here on Straight Talk Africa. My colleague, Paul Cisco, has more.
I stand before you as the President of the United States and a proud American. I also stand before you as the son of a man from Africa.
Building on progress made at the U.S. African Leaders Summit in Washington last summer, President Obama travels to Africa. He'll attend the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Nairobi, Kenya on July 25th and 26th before moving on to Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa.
There are people who feel that perhaps, in fact, the president shouldn't be going to Addis Ababa. Why?
For us, the president's trip to Ethiopia is an important stop. It's an important stop that will convey to the government and people of Ethiopia our commitment to supporting their efforts in fighting terrorism, but also will be an opportunity to use the voice of the president to convey messages to the government of Ethiopia regarding human rights, regarding press freedom, and to ensure that this government continues efforts that will put Ethiopia in the right place when it comes to human rights.
The president will meet with the Ethiopian leadership, visit the headquarters of the African Union, and address its leadership. The African visit comes as a deadly civil war rages on between the forces of South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar.
And the solution is peace, and neither one of them have been willing to set aside their own goals to move in that direction.
Let's go to the issue of Burundi, the Burundi crisis.
She also explained the U.S. position on term limits in light of Burundi's President Pierre Nkurunziza's controversial bid for a third term and a similar push in Rwanda for President Paul Kagame.
Consistently, we have stated that we do not support any government that changes its constitution to extend term limits that benefits the president who is in power. And it doesn't matter what country that is.
With this trip, the president reaffirms America's support for the emerging continent and will continue raising good governance issues with his African counterparts.
To the new Africa, the Africa that is rising and so full of promise, and to our shared task to keep on working for the peace and prosperity and justice that all our people seek and that all our people so richly deserve.
Paul Cisco, VOA News, Washington.
Thanks, Paul, for that report. And before we begin today's discussion, I am joined by my colleague, Vincent Makori, host and managing editor of Voice of America's Africa 54, a daily news magazine television program. He is on assignment in Kenya, covering President Obama's visit. He joins us live from the capital, Nairobi. Good evening, Vincent.
Good evening, Ndugu Shaka.
How are you?
I'm doing well, Shaka. I'm in Nairobi.
Yes, talk to us about the mood on the ground, my friend.
Well, it's everything. It's a excitement. There is a frenzy, and of course, the high expectations also are mixed with a little bit of frustration. This evening, the news was more focused on the road closures around the city as President Obama arrives in Nairobi. Many Nairobi residents will not have an easy way around town beginning tomorrow on to Sunday when the president leaves the country. So there's that part of it, the frustration. Airports will be closed sometime on Friday and Sunday. And so it's a mixed bag of things. At the same time, everybody's in high expectation. They want to see the president land here, as the son of this land, but also the first sitting president of the United States to visit this country.
Now, talking about expectations, Vincent, I know that you obviously have been interacting with a lot of people eating nyama choma, sukuma wiki, and ugari, and what have you. If there was one or two important things, frankly, what is it that most Kenyans would like to see being delivered by their own son of the soil?
Many are saying that this will be a great opportunity for the president of the United States to raise a few issues with the Kenyan authorities, particularly in the area of entrenching democratic principles in this country, but also respect of human rights and freedom of press. There have been concerns that while the country is doing well, and many people are kind of looking forward to a better future under the current leadership, there have also been some steps backward. There have been issues of corruption, although the Kenyan president denies that they're losing the fight on corruption. Many feel that President Obama could use this opportunity to kind of nudge the Kenyan leaders to fight more to eliminate or reduce corruption and also in a way help the country to become again a shining nation in the East African region.
Let me ask you a $1 billion question, Vincent. You know as well as I do that President Obama could have gone to Kenya much earlier, but he couldn't do that because Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta had some questions to answer at the Hague-based ICC, International Criminal Court. Now that you do have a situation where the deputy president is actually having questions at the Hague, is the president going to shake hands with him?
Now, that is, I think, the million-dollar question. But President Uhuru Kenyatta, yesterday while addressing the nation, said the deputy president is part of the Kenyan government, and President Barack Obama is coming to visit this country, and he'll be meeting the leadership in this country, and that includes the deputy president. He categorically said that the deputy president will be part of the delegation.
Thank you very much, Vincent. Unfortunately, time happens not to be our best ally, but have a terrific time back home. We are going.
Thank you very much, Shaka.
You're most welcome, sir. We'll stay in Kenya and interact with Said Obama, uncle to U.S. President Barack Obama, the chief executive officer and board member of the Mama Sarah Obama Foundation. He joins us via telephone link up from Kisumu, Nyanza region. Good evening, Said.
Good evening, Ndugu. How are you doing?
I am hugely terrific. How is the mood in Nyanza and Kogero, for that matter?
People are upbeat. I mean, we are looking forward to receiving the president, though at the moment it's not clear if he's going to visit the village, but we are hoping that he visits the village. But even if he doesn't do that one, the most important thing is that he comes to Kenya. And I think everybody is expecting that he comes, down to Kogelo.
What about the family expectations and, of course, indeed, the people around Kogelo and Kisumu. Given that this is the first time that your nephew is coming back home for the first time as President of the United States, how does it feel like?
It feels good. Everywhere, preparations, they don't want to believe that the president will not, come to this part of the country. And so people are still expecting that he will find time to, come to Kogelo and, meet people who have always, supported whatever he has been doing since he started, his political career. So a lot of expectation.
I know that you have been informed officially that the president will not be coming to Kogelo, but have you seen any signs on the ground that suggest that, in fact, wait a minute, he may in fact be having some ideas of stopping by?
What has taken place in Dugu is that we had the American ambassador, His Excellency Godek, saying that Kogelo is not in the plan, in the program. But again, I cannot rule it out totally. Okay, I know in terms of logistics, sometimes it will be very difficult to have a rather American president visit. But, also due to security reasons, sometimes, they may prepare people to believe that it's not going to come, only to visit the village. So I don't know. Okay, what they are saying is that it's not in the program, but there's a certain percentage, some possibility that he could visit. So I don't want to rule it out totally.
What about Edimo, the famous indigenous doctor or forwarder, the man that in fact first predicted that Obama would in fact become the next president of the United States and had it correctly back in 2008? He seems to be at it again and says, wait a minute, the president is definitely coming to Kogelo, except that the American officials are not saying it for what he said was security reasons or security concerns. Have you heard anything in that direction?
Yes, Dimo resurrected, having been, quiet for a very long time. You remember, I think he spoke when the president was just, was just preparing himself to contest, the presidency. And since that time, we have not heard much of him. But, my take is that the president was elected because, he deserved to be elected. I don't think whether it was because of Dimo. But again, I want to say that, people can talk, and I believe Dimo also has the right to say whatever he wants to say. So I saw it on the internet, and I heard it, from different people that Dimo is predicting that the president is going to come to Kogelo. So I respect that opinion, though I may not, believe it 100%.
I know, of course, that you have met the president and indeed your nephew several times, and the last time, of course, was last year here in Washington, D.C. What do you intend to say to him the next time you see him around, whether it is Kogelo, Kisumu, or Nairobi? Are you, in fact, again going to address him as Bale?
Of course. I mean, he will always remain Barry to me, and I will always remain uncle to him. That's how we call each other, But when we meet, we are going to discuss some family issues. And also at national level, I would want to see him, do something about, something that will make this country an investment destination. One, and, second, I would like him to do something about the insecurity, which is as a result of, terrorist attacks, which are targeting Kenya, not because Kenya did something bad, but because Kenya is standing with the West. I also would want him to do something about Sudan. Sudan, Sudan has been having problems, and the problems are affecting the neighboring countries. And so I believe dealing with the situation in Sudan is going to help Kenya and many other countries around this region to stabilize, because to have a stable country, rather just within this region, is going to affect very many countries that are neighboring Sudan.
Thank you very much. Let's stop right there. I'd like to thank Said Obama, uncle of U.S. President Barack Obama and the Chief Executive Officer and the board member of the Mama Sarah Obama Foundation, for sharing his perspective with us today from Kisumu, Nyanza region. Now we'll pause for a short break and would like to remind you that Straight Talk Africa is now on the social networking website Twitter. Follow us at VOA Shaka, that's VOA Shaka, and join in on today's discussion with your questions and comments. Don't forget to use the hashtag VOA Obama Africa Trip, Obama Africa Trip. And we are still on Facebook. Just enter the keyword Straight Talk Africa, become a fan and connect with other friends of the Voice of America. We'll be right back with you, so please don't go away.
Global Entrepreneurship Summit's signature achievements in the past 5 years include: the United States has played a prominent role in organizing 5 global entrepreneurship summits that have elevated entrepreneurship on the global agenda, inspiring new generations of innovative entrepreneurs. The GES has opened up new markets for products and encouraged policymakers to break down barriers to business, such as the draft law currently being developed by the Moroccan government to create a legal status for startups. The U.S. has invested in over 1,000 initiatives and programs promoting entrepreneurship worldwide, many of which are focused on generating opportunities for women and youth and increasing access to capital for entrepreneurs.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. What is your opinion about today's topic? Call us at 202-619-3111. U.S. country code 1. When you call, remember the following. Ask only one question, keep your comment brief, and turn down the volume on your radio or television. Now let's return to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Giduyu Iwat, and welcome back. And today we are talking about the significance of U.S. President Barack Obama's trip to East Africa. And here in our Washington studios are 3 distinguished guests. Dr. Abdul Karim Bangura, author of several books and professor of international relations at Howard University, based here in the nation's capital. Ni Akuetteh, Executive Director of the African Immigrants Caucus, an advocacy group founded by immigrants from the African continent living in the United States. And last but not least, Obang Metho, the Executive Director of the Solidarity Movement for a New Ethiopia, or SMNE, a non-political and social justice movement of a diverse group of Ethiopians that seeks to stand together against human rights violations of the current Ethiopian government. Well, gentlemen, I have to say frankly that I am profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the opportunity to host the 3 of you.
Thanks for having us.
You're most welcome.
The honor is yours.
And
you are the mwalimu.
And I have to say that Dr. Karim Bangura, of course, author of several books, and I have to say the proud honor of 4 PhDs. Certainly not like the one that was earned by Dr. Grace Mugabe in 3 months. Is that how you got yours?
You got it.
I see. It's been a very long time since we last hosted you on Straight Talk Africa. As a matter of fact, I think the last time you were on the show, we were in Studio 37.
That is correct, yes, the old studio.
You're most welcome.
Yes.
Nia Akuetteh, of course, you've been here not a long time ago. You're most welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And for you, I can't say much, frankly, except to say that I am very, very delighted to have the opportunity to have you again on the show, because I think you too, the last time you were on Straight Talk Africa, Obang, you were in Studio 37.
Yes.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Later in the program, we'll give you, the audience, a chance, of course, to call and talk with us. They are here. They will answer all your questions. You're tuned into Straight Talk Africa, and we'll have more of our conversation later. And of course, I am told here by some Sergeant Major in my ear that I have to ask you questions.
Well, that's your job.
Your reaction. Your reaction to the President's trip to Kenya, especially the land, of course, of his father.
Well, as a Pan-Africanist, I would give him a D, and
a D. You mean a
for
distinction?
his relationship.
Is it a distinction,
D, as the great D for his relations with the African continent. We've done a book, almost 400 pages, of people who are his staunch supporters, and most of them voted for him twice. And the evaluation of his Africa policy remains to be desired. The B he earned as a Pan-Africanist is because of his bold policy.
Is it a B or a D?
A D, the D as in David.
Distinction?
The D he earns for...
Is that a distinction?
A,
because,
B, C, D.
Because
from
here...
A through F is a D grade.
That is a failure grade.
Thank you.
Is that what you mean?
Close to failure, close to the F grade.
I see.
And that D is only because of his bold policy towards Cuba.
Okay.
By opening relationship, by opening the doors to say, look, we cannot continue the way we've been dealing with Cuba. Or I think that was bold. But when it comes to the motherland, the African continent, all the evaluations by people who voted for him twice don't look very stellar.
I see.
And that is unfortunate, because as a Karim member of the National Democratic Executive Committee, I was expecting a whole lot more from our president, and then especially when you compare him to the president before him, George W. Bush. George W. Bush, who did more for Africa.
Did you vote for him, by the way? Did you vote for President Barack Obama?
Well, that's a very private question. I would say that during the primaries, I supported Hillary Clinton. You already know that. We talked about this in Studios 37.
Yeah, and I was it is your democratic right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who I voted for in the general election is a good surprise. Let's put it that way. But as we discussed in Studio 37, I was very worried from the start, because the Africa Bureau was the last to be staffed. And as soon as Johnny Carson was chosen over Dr. Gwendolyn Michael, I knew Africa was going to be marginalized.
Your friend Gwendolyn Michael?
That's correct.
Professor.
Because again, we have to be realistic. Gwendolyn Michael lived on the continent. But she served there.
I know.
And she is an African American. She lived and served there, and she understood.
But so did Johnny Carson. He was, in fact, a Peace Corps in Tanzania for 3 years. Besides being a foreign service officer later.
That is correct. But always from the privileged position.
Not as a Peace Corps.
Well, like as I said, a Peace Corps in Africa lives in a privileged position. Now, their service is appreciated, it's wanted, it's loved. But I had
What about Gwendolyn Michael?
Gwendolyn Michael lived in Ghana
As what?
As a student, as somebody who went and lived in the country and served in the country and traveled extensively, did our research in Ghana. Most of our writings were in Ghana and traveled extensively over
I
the
remember
continent.
meeting her, by the way, in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and she had books for St. Augustine University in Mwanza, which I was very delighted to deliver. What about you, Ni? What grade did you give President Obama? He gives him a D. I thought it was a distinction because in the British context, a distinction is the equivalent of the American A.
Well, you know, the professor is entitled to his grade. I give the President Obama, much better grades, but I don't give him an A for perfect. I don't think his Africa policy has been perfect, but for me, that is a superficial issue. The more important issue is why. Whatever grade you give him, why did he wind up that way? Because it seems to me there are two important things I look at. The United States is an imperfect democracy, but pretty democratic. The president is elected by the people. Congress is an institution that holds his feet to the fire. You know, we mentioned Cuba. He's not going to get an ambassador confirmed to Cuba because Congress is furious at him for opening up the embassy. He's done what he can.
We know that he's a democracy. Is he elected in an election that is deemed to be free, fair, credible, and transparent?
In the United States,
yes.
I think sufficiently. No election is perfect. So U.S. elections are not perfect. But the point is, I think that he does reflect the feelings of the American people twice, in 2008 and 2012. He was elected fairly, and this particular Congress, I think given the point that the professor made about George Bush, I think you have to look at their circumstance, okay? Obama has been attacked and demonized simply for having Kenyan parentage. George Bush didn't get any of that. George Bush crashed the economy so that when he was helping Africa, he had better economics to deal with. Moreover, George Bush was pushed. People cite the health issues, I mean, HIV and PEPFAR that he did for Africa. I think you have to look at how he came to that. A constituency pushed him to do that, the evangelicals. So frankly, as we sit here, we three are African-born residents of the United States. So regardless of what grade one gives President Obama for his Africa policy, and let me repeat, I don't give him perfect marks, but I give him slightly better than the professor has given him. But I say we have to look in the mirror. We are not organized. We don't have a strong voice. We don't push him. Even when you look, I mean, I talked with Gwen Michael at Georgetown. I know her well. As the professor mentioned, she's sort of semi-Ghanaian. So we are very close. But how do you get appointed? You get appointed by being part of the president, those who work for him.
Right.
I did a little bit of work for the president. The point is that we need to organize, play our cards well so that we get appointed. And once we get appointed, we have to push whoever is president. We have to hold their feet to the fire. It seems to me that we, the Africans here, are not sufficiently organized. We sit back and we say, well, his father is from Kenya, so he should solve all of Africa's problems. And I think that is wrong. So I think we should look in the mirror. We need to do a better job.
There is need for a very active African diaspora.
Absolutely.
Now, when you talk about the President George W. Bush in terms of his accomplishments, of course, PEPFAR is a great program, no question about it. A lot of Africans have benefited out of it, especially those suffering from malaria, HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis. You can also talk perhaps about the Millennium Challenge account,
but
which of course is not limited to Africa,
yes,
but across the world. You can talk about that. But what about Obama's, for example, YALI, Young African Leadership Initiative, which also, of course, is known as the Mandela Washington Fellowship, which basically looks at the future of Africa in terms of leadership. What about Power Africa, attempting to light the African continent What about the Global Entrepreneurship Summit?
Yes.
And these are programs, by the way, which really do not encourage charity, dependency. These are programs that benefit from essentially market opportunities. Correct?
Yes, absolutely. And so, given where I'm sitting next to the professor, I say, yes, we need to look at some of the good things Obama has done. But in fact, I would like to shift the conversation a little bit. It's not what Obama can do for Africa, but what Africa must do for itself. And for that, I think we need democracy. And I think if you have to criticize any American president, my biggest criticism is they support dictators. Now, dictators block their people. So when Obama said in Accra that Africa doesn't need strong men, it needs strong institutions, I happen to think that's the best thing he did for the continent, and I'm sorry that democracy seems to have fallen off. All the programs we mentioned are good programs, but they are sort of favors that are being done. We need democracy in Africa, and we need the U.S. to stop supporting African dictators. That's the best thing you can do for Africa.
Unfortunately, time happens not to be our best ally. You are tuned into Straight Talk Africa. We'll have more of a conversation on President Obama's upcoming trip to Kenya and Ethiopia in a moment. First, we'll review some feedback we have received from you through social media. But now, here is a letter of the week from a Straight Talk Africa Facebook fan in Uganda.
Our letter of the week is from Patricia Nambi of Kampala, Uganda. She writes, "Developing strong institutions is paramount to the growth of Africa. Strong political, social, and economic institutions are required to solve Africa's problems. Powerful legal institutions can curtail the abuse of human rights and promote good governance. Africa needs strong leaders who can defend their nations from foreign interference and the negative forces of neocolonialism, and someone that can protect the continent's resources and protect the rights of the citizens."
Like Voice of America on Facebook. Follow VOA on Twitter. Join VOA on our YouTube channel. Like, follow, join VOA.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. Call us now with your questions and comments. The number is 202-619-3111 and the U.S. country code is 1. Call us direct and we'll call you right back. Remember to turn down the volume on your radio or television and keep your comments brief. Now back to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Gizu-Iwat, and welcome back to Straight Talk Africa, live from Washington. When U.S. President Barack Obama made his first landmark trip to the continent, he condemned the leaders who enrich themselves at the expense of the people. He also urged Africa's citizens to demand stronger governments. This leads us to our question of the week, which asks, during his 2009 trip to Ghana, President Barack Obama said Africa needs strong institutions, not strong men. To what extent has that message resonated with the African people and leaders? Thanks for using all our social media platforms to communicate to us. Let's begin with a comment from Straight Talk Africa Facebook fan, Rwanga Maja Achilis from Nairobi, Kenya, who writes, "I don't think what President Obama said was true. Africa needs strong men that can affect significant change. The U.S. and its policies are in place to destroy and blame African leaders who don't cooperate with America. I conclusively say that Obama has done Africa more harm than good. Africans have gained nothing from his leadership as the U.S. president." Another reminder that we are on Twitter. Use the hashtag VOA Obama Africa Trip. And if you haven't yet, please follow us at VOA Shaka. And speaking of it, let's go to a tweet from Victor Azule of Ghana. who responds to our question saying, not much. The problem in Africa is not so much to do with not knowing what to do, but the will to do what needs to be done. We have another tweet from Ghana, Askia Clinton, tweeting that Obama visit to Kenya will help attract investors to aid build the economy. Well, what about that, Obang Metho?
Thank you. I think that the guest before me has said it very well. So when we have to go by a score going by professors, I think the president is A, in giving a very good speech, but definite D in action. When he went to Ghana, he gave that speech what Africa needs, a strong institution, not a strong man. The country is busy today is my own country, Ethiopia. This is a country that which is claimed to win an election 100%. And also this is the country that which is passed a law, charity proclamation bill, and most of the people don't know. In Ethiopia today, it is against law for woman right, human right, child right, reconciliation. The value that which is America is founded on, it is against the law in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian government also passed a law, anti-terror laws. From the beginning, the U.S. official that was there, he said that the president is going to Ethiopia. The number one is war on terror. So what we see in the U.S. policy, as long as the African dictator terrorize their own people, and fight the terror for the U.S. policy for the West is okay. So in this case, what almost everybody before me say was that, honestly, the rhetoric, there's no action to it. So in that case, then look at, for example, in Ethiopia. I want to use the case of Ethiopia. The president is going to a country where the most brilliant Ethiopian journalists, human rights, the people who could build a strong institution are in jail. And the president will be addressing all the strong men. He will be confronting the strong men. But when he go there, would he have really the guts to go and talk to the Ethiopian voice of freedom, which is the journalist, which is the politician? So in that, I would like to make this point that I want to come to this. For instance, we live in the countries like in the U.S., melting pot societies, where your nationality, your ethnicity is the last thing for me. By being a human being, by being a citizen, you are from Uganda, I'm from Ethiopia, we are brothers by the law. In my own countries, we have a country which is really run on ethnic apartheid system. And this is simple. We have a TPLF, Tigray Liberation Front. They went to the bush to fight to liberate the Dirk. When they come in, they keep the Liberation Front to continue and create what they call EPRDF. Today in Ethiopia, the internet, only the internet used in Ethiopia, 1.5. With that, the government even paying, this spyware on the people. In Ethiopia, the military is being controlled by TPLF, not EPRDF. The economy is by TPLF, not EPRDF. The intelligence, not EPRDF, it's a TPLF. So in this case, we have in a country where the Obama should be saying that what we Ethiopia need is a strong institution and a strong government, a government of the people. So in my point, the president his policy did not side with the people, but with autocratic regime.
But what about you and your brothers and sisters? You have a very well-organized Ethiopian diaspora, especially here in the United States. I know in your particular case, you have actually been up on Capitol Hill. You have been to talk to the committees that deal with Africa and what have you. When you talk to them with your well-organized, Ethiopian diaspora, very assertive, what do you get from them? What is the response?
What we get is simple. They are saying that, there's no strong, viable alternatives. And my response to them is, you cannot through someone in the desert tell them that build 2-story buildings. In Ethiopia, a viable alternative cannot be created in that kind of environment. Ethiopian can be organized outside the country. But if you have the bloggers, the social media in Ethiopia, as I was saying, the Somali, which did not have a country for almost 20 years, they have more internet access to that. So when we talk to the U.S. policy makers, the interest is their national interest. So in other words, the U.S. has actually jeopardized. They put their national interest in the long-term interest because the autocratic regime will not last, but the people will last.
We'll come to that later. Let's move on to a posting from Emmanuel Navayin Eshun from Pretoria, South Africa, who writes, President Obama's message of strong institutions is only preached when it suits our African leaders. But we as a people are hungry to see institutions work. For me, that message has not resonated in any way among our leaders. The people seem to demand more from the institutions, particularly the African Union. And another Facebook comment comes from Mohammed Ahmed Mansour of Monrovia, Liberia, who writes, I think President Obama's visit to Africa is a vote of confidence that will enable Africa to attain sustainable development. I hope the United States President's visit will pave the way to peace, security, justice, and equality on our continent. President Obama's visit is commendable. He deserves to be welcomed. Well, what about that, good professor?
Mwalimu, the idea that Obama does nothing because Africans are not organized is the greatest myth that people sell.
Why?
The reason why Obama has not done much for the African, as a Pan-Africanist, when I say the African here in the United States, the African in the Caribbean, the Latin America, and the one on the motherland, we are all Africans. Just like he has marginalized and have not paid much attention to Africans in the United States, which they call African Americans. And Latin American, Caribbean is the same attitude as far as its relationship with Africans on the motherland. So it's a myth. The reason is because there are no African-centered people around this cabinet that can put the agenda of Africans there. Why? Because we only have very token representation in the Obama cabinet, compared to Bush, who had 3, Carter and Clinton, where we had 6 representations. We have to be honest about those things. And the idea that Congress is the one that stymies Obama's agenda, that's what the opposition is supposed to do. That is what we call democracy. The opposition has to be effective.
But what about someone might say...
That's one point, and then I will be quiet. I've done the research. We've had over 20,000 executive orders in the history of the United States. Only a do-nothing president can always blame the other party for doing what the other party is supposed to do. A president that has to do one of the tools our Constitution gives the president, 2 major tools the president has, is the executive order, which Obama can use to get his agenda across, just like Ronald Reagan did to get his programs across. Ronald Reagan was so good with the executive order, he fired everybody at the national airport where they were not doing what they were supposed to do in the best interest of the nation. And today, when you drive out there, whose statue do you see? Ronald Reagan. And the airport is even called Ronald Reagan Airport. That is effective leadership. So to blame the other party for doing what the other party is supposed to do, for me, is really not credible.
Now, Professor,
now
there's no question, of course, that talking or freedom of expression is your democratic right.
That is correct.
No one can take it away from you. Mm-hmm. But I think that, honestly, you also, frankly, have to be balanced in your criticism because you come from Sierra Leone.
That is correct.
On April 18, 2015, I had the opportunity to interview President Ernest Bai Koroma. And he told me, frankly, how Obama has been very helpful, especially intervening in terms of the situation of Ebola. I also had an opportunity to interview President Ellen Salif. And it was the same thing. And there are a lot of other things that I have heard. And when you look, frankly, at his efforts in as far as Yali is concerned, Young African Leaders Initiative, the Mandela Washington Program. The man is looking far. Someone might tell you like that. Well, unfortunately, time, of course, happened not to be our best ally, but we'll come back to that. Well, that does it for today's social media segment. Just a reminder that we appreciate all the feedback, whether it's in social media or using other means to communicate to us. Please keep them coming, and if you are a new fan, drop us a line at africatv@voanews.com. Once again, our email address is africatv@voanews.com, or post your comment on our Facebook page. Enter the keyword Straight Talk Africa. Be sure to visit us online at voaafrica.com or you can join our YouTube channel, subscribe to VOA TV to Africa, and follow us on Twitter at VOA Shaka. Now let's take a look at what's on tap for next week's program.
Next week on Straight Talk Africa, we discuss the controversial presidential election in Burundi and the ongoing process of lifting presidential term limits in Rwanda. That's coming up next week right here on Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Giziwe Iwat, and a reminder that you are tuned into Straight Talk Africa. To participate in our discussion, please call us at 202-619-3111, and the U.S. country code is 1. We'll continue our discussion in a moment, so please don't go away.
Global Entrepreneurship Summit's signature achievements in the past 5 years include: the U.S. sent some of America's top entrepreneurs abroad through the Presidential Ambassadors for Global Entrepreneurship. In 2014, those ambassadors began meeting with entrepreneurs and promoted entrepreneurship on 4 continents. The United States Global Innovation through Science and Technology Initiative has helped young scientists from across the Muslim world generate more than $80 million in revenue for their companies. The Obama administration has committed roughly $3.2 billion to support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises and mobilized $80 million in private capital for startups in the developing world.
We are able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis. We hope that our viewers are getting inspired when they watch our show. They're getting a view of the world from a different perspective, things that perhaps are not in their immediate vicinity. Today, I could put in on the show something that is a little different, a little unique, and this gives me that inspiration to come to work.
If you like today's show, please write and tell us what you think or give us some suggestions. Be sure to tell us what station you're tuned into. Our address, Straight Talk Africa, Voice of America, 330 Independence Avenue Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20237 USA. Or send us an email at africatv@voanews.com. Log on to our website at voaafrica.com. Or post your comments on Facebook. Keywords Straight Talk Africa.
We've had a lot of excitement, and I think we needed to have this kind of excitement because Obama has been the talk of the world ever since he took over leadership in the U.S. And he's visited Africa and never stepped into his fatherland. And now that he's found time to come and visit Kenya, the place where his father sprang from before he went to the U.S., there is a lot of excitement because Kenya regard Obama as their son.
The president's visit to Kenya in particular boosts the confidence of investors in the nation. Then it makes the investors believe that there is something good in this nation. There is confidence in the leadership in the nation, unlike the issues that were raised, choices of consequences.
In the long run, they are good projects, but somehow it's sort of pretense. Why do we do things when the visitor is coming? We should always beautify the city with or without a visitor. So it's like we are wasting a lot of resources.
Indeed, welcome back. Those were views expressed to my VOA colleague, Vincent Makori, at the campus of the University of Nairobi, downtown, about Mr. Obama's trip to their country, Kenya. Well, we have to go to the lifeline of the show, which are the telephone callers, and I gather that we do have a gentleman by the name Samuel from Uganda. Good evening, Samuel. You're most welcome to Straight Talk Africa.
Good evening, Ndugu Shaka. How are you?
I am hugely terrific. How are you today, Sam?
I'm very terrific and excited to have the President Obama visit East Africa. The question goes to Dr. Karim Bangura, whom I have always interacted in Studio 7. What contingency economic strategies can the U.S. government deliver to uplift the economic emancipation of East African countries and Sub-Saharan Africa in general. Do you think that President Obama can use his respectable personality to bring the two warring factions of Southern Sudan to a full democratic entity? Thank you very much, and we welcome President Obama to East Africa. Thank you, Shaka.
Thank you very much, Sam, and enjoy the trip, at least if not being physically in Nairobi, via osmosis. Go ahead.
Mwalimu, of course, my Uganda family may be biased, but, but I love them so much because they are very astute. And what I found is that they even tape these shows and they teach in universities and colleges and high schools of what is done here on Straight Talk Africa. Really? I was very impressed. These people have libraries of this show, which is educational for them. And the brother is correct. The thing is that no matter what economic prescriptions one have for the administration, we already have given it to them. Because both of our four of our evaluations and strategies already, we make sure that they get to them. So they are not unaware of what some of us are doing to make sure that they see what other Africans and black folks in America also think that they can help. My suggestion is that there should be no dancing on the streets of Ethiopia and Nairobi.
Why not?
Because we Africans dance very well. We are already known for that. I think what they need...
But we also like to entertain guests.
We want to entertain, but this time no entertainment.
Why?
They need to sit down with Obama when he goes there, and they sit down and have serious discussions about some of the most pressing issues.
Which
of
Ethiopians
the region.
are you talking about? You're going obviously to be with the government officials.
Yeah, so they need to sit down and talk serious. If I were, unfortunately, I'm not the leader of any of those societies. There will be no dancing, no celebrations and all that.
Kidding?
It is going to be serious discussions, serious issues on the plate.
The government of the United States and the government in Addis Ababa have excellent relationships.
They do,
so,
and so there is no more need to be dancing. What we need to do is sit down and talk and try to put action plan with a timetable, not just action plan, not just talking the talk, but specific dates and specific plans on how we can move some of these issues. I cannot say what Ethiopia should do for itself, nor can they are very smart people. They know what they want. They know what is good for them. So I think if they really engage him seriously and say, we need action plans, we need this, we need timeline. Unfortunately, I only have a year and a few more months to go. So anything he puts now is just going to be for the next person who comes in to take it and run. Just like Bush did, took some of Clinton's programs and ran with them, and he was successful. And Brother Nii can attest to the fact that the big highway in Ghana is called the George W. Bush Highway. Am I lying?
Thank you. Let's go to
not on that issue.
Let's go to Nigeria. I gather that we do have Patrick from Nigeria. Good evening, Patrick. You're most welcome to Straight Talk Africa.
Good evening, Mr. Shaka. Good evening, our guest, Patrick Crawford from Aruchuku here in Nigeria. I want to find out from our guest here. Obama is coming to Kenya and Ethiopia. What is does he have the package for the empowerment of the youth? I know very well that empowerment of the youth at least will help reduce all this issue of insecurity. What is the package for you? Because it's very, very important. Because if you are not empowering the youth now, it's another big problem, which everybody knows this is a major, I think, demographically, economically, politically. What is the fate of the youth politically and the rest? Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.
You're most welcome. I mean, people talk about empowering the youth. I mean, frankly, if there is anything that this president is actually attempting to do, and he's doing it, it is through the yearly program, and I have had the opportunity to interact with a lot of them. To be honest with you, I think he's looking ahead, because 8 years is not, my friend, a long time. It is not like being President Robert Gabriel Mugabe, who has been president for 35 years, or Theodore Obiang in Equatorial Guinea, or Jose dos Santos in Angola, or Yoweri Museveni, 29, and you can't see much, frankly, that they can say, you know what, this is what I did. So let's go again. We stay in Nigeria. Hello?
Yes, hello.
Patrick, I already talked to him. Obang.
Yes.
Do you agree with the professor that people should not be dancing for President Obama in Ethiopia, really?
No, I think that, I will leave that to the professors.
But what would you say to him if President Obama were to be watching Straight Talk Africa right now, and you know he is on the verge, of course, of going to your homeland? What would you say to him?
What I would tell the president is
simple. Look in the camera and talk
What
to
I
him.
would tell the president is simple. It is about your legacy. And if you have to remember what you have done for Africa, it should be what you have done to the people of Africa, not the dictator of Africa. The continent has been, African Union is 50 years. Since the last 50 years, we did not see that much. So if president has to address these issues, I think that investing in the peoples, not in these dictators. And I would want to give that example of my country again, giving an Ethiopia, for instance. Ethiopia is the headquarters of African Union. Mm-hmm. And African Union, that if we want the reform, should we not be living by example of that? So if the country that where you live in, where the base of African Union is based on that, it's a country where there's a young lady from here, an Ethiopian woman who lives in Nebraska. She went back to Ethiopia to get an identity for ID card. And so once she went there, say that put the name of your ethnic groups. The young woman, she's half Amara, half Oromo. She said that Amara plus Oromo equal, put whatever you want. The officials say, why? Why do you want to do that? So my point is, having a countries of Ethiopia, almost 90 million, like if
in fact, 95.8 million.
100 million people.
The
and this year, we're talking about the young people
on the continent.
Here. Look in my countries. We have lots of our young people, this idea of economy is booming. Africa is rising. If Africa is rising, our young people will not be dying in the Red Sea trying to run away from Africa. If Ethiopia economy is booming, why are our young people organs being harvested in the Middle East trying to go somewhere? So my simple point is, if the president really want to, this legacy on stakes, side with the people of Africa. For example, in Ethiopia, 2 laws. And I would like the president to meet with the Ethiopian opposition or a journalist, even the family of the journalists. Number one, this law, anti-terror law, and the charity proclamation law, which hold the Ethiopian hostage, should be repealed, and the president have the ability to do that.
But when it comes to economic growth or economic development, surely you are not suggesting or claiming that it is not reflected in people's stomachs or in people's communities.
Oh, excellent. You mentioned a very good point.
There are roads there, I have seen.
Look, there's a road. You cannot measure economy by the road. Look at how Ethiopians live in those buildings on the street. You cannot measure economy. The economy of Ethiopia, they're saying that the economy is booming. Yes, it's booming, but for one ethnic group and few elite, not the people of Ethiopia.
If there was one thing that President Obama could do about dictatorship, frankly, in Africa, we have not more than 30 seconds.
Yes.
What could he do?
What would he do for the, to side with the people of Africa? Not only the rhetoric.
How?
Like, for instance, that it was done, in Eastern Europe, empower the civil society. In Africa, these African leaders, like as you look at it now, most of them are changing, the constitution for, to 4th term. 4th term means a lifetime, because once you never have a leader that will change it from 3rd term to 4th term, thinking that will change. So civil society has to be empowered.
If somebody were to ask you any particular reason why Africans on the ground do not prevent that from happening?
Oh, yeah, simple. Because the big man, the man with the gun. For example, we have a very smart, very bright Ethiopian. Why are the most bright, brilliant of our society living abroad rather than home? Because this man, big man of guns, would not allow us to do that.
It is very ironic because a lot of those big men, in fact, seize the power using AK-47.
Exactly.
But if someone else gets it now, he's a terrorist.
They want to do that. But what again, also, the point I want to mention is that we are not asking Obama to free us. We are not asking the West to free African. We can free ourselves, but don't be a roadblock to our freedom.
Well, on that note, thanks very much, distinguished guests, Dr. Abdul Karim Bangura of Howard University, based here in the nation's capital, Akuetteh, Executive Director of the African Immigrants Caucus, and last but not least, Obang Metho, Executive Director of the Solidarity Movement for a New Ethiopia. Thanks to all our affiliates, and of course, get better, not bitter Africa, and please remember to keep the African hopes alive.